Welcome to my guide to defeating the hard expedition levels. You'll find that many of my runs aren't that perfect, and while I could have replayed them, I chose not to because 1, I'm extremely lazy, but 2, I thought it'd be more helpful to see where I made mistakes so you can learn from that when you play the levels yourselves. So with that out of the way, let's go into the first stage. Okay, so here's the team that I'm using. The key takeaway here is you want to have cost increasers on your team. That's why I have Guilford and Suzaku. Everyone else, it kind of depends what you have. This mission is not too difficult, but you definitely want at least 2 good attackers to take out Valletta and Jeremiah. Unfortunately, I don't have the Awakenings or Remodels for his Nightmare frame, but I believe for most of the Nightmare frames, it's probably Silver or higher, and for the pilots, I think I got at least the Bronze levels completed, if not most of the Silver. I know for surely, I don't think I awakened her once for this mission, so that's I guess reassuring if you haven't either. So now that you understand the team, let's get on to the battle. Yes, there's a little glitch with Jerry. I couldn't get him deployed for some reason. It goes away though, and I get him out there, so there you go. So I put out Guilford there, and then I have Cornelia backing him up. And the idea is simply here that Guilford's not strong enough to take out certain Nightmare frame pilots, but I need a cost increaser, so I figure putting it behind Cornelia works here. You could theoretically put Guilford in front of Cornelia, but then you risk him possibly getting killed, so I thought it made more sense here, and it's also more canonically accurate. If you've unlocked the other weapon for his Gloucester, you could use that lance here instead, so that way he can support Cornelia, or he could also use Dalton's Gloucester if you have that lance unlocked, or of course there's the Glass and Knight's Nightmare frame, and then Cornelia's Gloucester. But I didn't have any of those, so he was stuck using his Nightmare frame. So I have Suzaku out here because he's going to increase the cost while being a nice ranged pilot. You don't really need any ranged pilots in this map because everything is ground, but it didn't hurt. I thought it made sense. You could of course have used Nagisa or Millie instead of Suzaku, but I have Suzaku here and Cornelia can boost his power with her Gloucester, so it was kind of a win-win situation. So Millie here is great not only because she's a good healing pilot, but she also increases attack power while Ashford pilots and also reduces their costs. So she's a very powerful pilot here, and with a Sutherland she can heal everybody in range, which helps out a ton because as you know in expedition mode, if your pilots die, they're out for the rest of the campaign, so it's good to keep them constantly healed, and Millie does that for me. So I put Valletta out here because the idea was that she was going to intercept the enemies that come across in the battlefield. However, I realized that this was the wrong position for her because the enemies can still get past her. I should have put her by Cornelia instead, which is why you're going to see in a few moments I'm going to withdraw her. It didn't affect the rest of the battle, but you should know that Valletta was in the wrong position. If you want to use Valletta with Dalton's Gloucester, make sure to put that pilot near a location where the enemies are going to congregate by. So Cornelia's can take out the enemy over there, and essentially for the rest of this, it's pretty straightforward until Jeremiah and Valletta show up. And even then, it's nothing to really worry about. I'm in a really good position here. I got 2 healers protecting Colin, and Millie's defending everyone else. So at this point, we're just kind of waiting on the bosses. So the reason why I chose not to deploy the Lelouch there is because I realized that Cornelia could take out Valletta on her own, and I thought it made more sense to put Lelouch to stun Jeremiah. And there you go. Cornelia took her out with the special and her own attack in one swing, which is kind of cool when that happens. So I deployed the Lelouch here to stun Jeremiah. He'll be attacking him, and by the time Jeremiah gets out of the stun, Colin will have an easy chance to take him out. And there you go, mission completed. Really easy, not gonna lie. So here's my team to take out stage 2. It's very similar to the last one. The only major difference is I have Detard in the Glasgow because I have to cloak certain pilots so Dalton won't attack them from afar. One mistake I made here is that I gave him a Glasgow instead of a Sarlin, which will bite me in the butt towards the last part of this challenge, but thankfully it didn't impact things too much, so I was not too angry about it. But if you're going to use Detard here, definitely give him a Sarlin or something with an equivalent range. For the rest of the pilots and Nightmare frames, use what you have that are equivalent to this. This is not the best way to complete the mission. For example, I gave Valletta Dalton's Gloucester, but you could have given her the Borai Diesel or the Lancelot with the Varus cannon or another Sarlin, and that would have worked just as well. I just like Dalton's cannon and I'll use it whenever I can. So with that in mind, let's get to the stage. So I'm using Zaku and Guilford as my cost increasers again. Zaku is in the back here to give an opportunity to take out not only the flying enemies, but also enemies that will pass them along the way. If you put your pilots in the back, it gives you a better opportunity to take out flying enemies that may get past your other pilots, hence why I have them in the back. So I'll have Valletta later on in the front to take out certain flying enemies, and Zaku will take out the stragglers. So I put the Lelouch out here to take out Jeremiah and the two Sarlins. If you don't take them out now, specifically Jeremiah, but this also applies to the Sarlins, they will eventually come towards you when Cornelia appears, so you can either take them out now or wait later on. It's up to you. I figured with Lelouch's fast relocation time, taking them out now made more sense, but again, it's totally up to you. So I put out Cornelia here, maybe a little too early. I probably could have put out Jerry first or waited for his relocation time to expire, then place him, and then place Cornelia, and then place Detard, but I chose this order. It didn't really matter in the long run, but it probably wasn't the best way to do that. So you see the problem here, Dietar cloaked 3 pilots with his ability. However, now that I think about it, he could have potentially cloaked 4 if he had the Sarlin out. I'm still not entirely sure how that would work with priority, because technically he could only cloak 3 on deployment, and he cloaked the 3 you see there. So maybe the Sarlin wouldn't have mattered, but then again though, he might have targeted Guilford instead of Suzaku. But because I didn't use the Sarlin and I used the Glass Skull instead, this is the result you see. So not the worst thing ever, but essentially what's going to happen is Dalton is now going to attack Guilford, which is what I didn't want to happen, and so I'll end up having to withdraw him. So I tried to compensate for my mistake with Dietar by bringing out Ashford the Lelouch to stun Dalton. And it wasn't a terrible plan, but ultimately doesn't fix the problem. As you're going to see later on, I'm going to withdraw Guilford to protect him. So now that I withdrew Guilford from the battlefield, Dalton will have no choice but to approach Cornelia in close range combat, which you know is suicidal. So as you can see here, I completely screwed up the timing for Valletta, because by the time I got her out, several airships had already passed her, or will pass her to be more accurate. If I was faster, I should have got her out as soon as possible, but now she will only be able to take out the flying enemies that are currently in front of her, and the 2 that get past her, Suzaku will have to deal with, which is why I mentioned earlier I wanted to put Zaku in the back to take out enemies that get away, like these. I should have put out Valletta much earlier, or maybe just given her a different nightmare frame. But like I said earlier, I like Dalton's Gloucester, and if I can use it in a battle, I definitely will. So I paused here to demonstrate why Zaku is again placed in his current position, because if you time it right, like how I did here, I was able to take out a flying enemy, a nightmare frame to the right of me, and damage Cornelia, which is again why I put him over there. By the way, important note, Millie survives being attacked here, but in many of my previous runs, she actually got killed, so keep that in mind, Millie could actually get killed over here. If that's happening to you, maybe use Dietar again to keep her protected, or perhaps withdraw her if you need her for future battles, which you will, or maybe use a different pilot to back her up. So you see here I actually put in Dietar to cloak Millie to keep her alive, but if I had awakened him before the battle, his cost would have been less, so it wouldn't have cost as much to deploy him, but whatever, he's here and he's protecting Millie. This was a fun bug that happens sometimes where I get stuck on the pilot's menu to activate their special, really annoying stuff, and unfortunately it's still a problem even now. So I withdrew Valletta from the battlefield, which was kind of badly timed because I could have used her to at least attack Cornelia, but I didn't, and of course I withdrew her because she would have died otherwise. Still though, that could have been done a lot better. I think the way I handled Valletta in this mission was not optimal at all, but it was one way I guess to take care of it. Maybe I could have put Valletta above where that nightmare frame is and have her go downwards with the Gloucester. That would have been more useful, I suppose, but whatever, this is what I chose to do and it wasn't that great. I put Lelouch out here to take out the enemies plus Cornelia. In retrospect, I probably could have waited to deploy him once Cornelia got in range of my Cornelia. That way I have Lelouch plus Cornelia taking out Cornelia, if that was not confusing to understand, but I instead chose to deploy him a little earlier than expected. Doesn't really matter either way, but in case you wanted a better approach to do it, that probably would have been the better approach. So that was stage 2, was not too difficult. You'll notice I never used Colin, so I could have placed another cost increaser on the team, or perhaps another ranged attacker. There were also, of course, weapons you could use besides the Nightmare Frame pilots, like the mines or the Gefyan disturbers, which I did not use for the battle. You could try that too if you're having any problems. So here's my team for stage 3. The only major difference is that I put in Nagisa and Toto instead of Detard and Valletta. And the reason why is because Toto is going to block the enemies on the top portion of the map towards the end. You could definitely substitute him for another Nightmare Frame pilot, but I like the fact that he combos well with Nagisa and he is a really powerful tank. So with that in mind, let's get to the stage. So here we have an annoying glitch where for some reason I can't grab Jeremiah to deploy him. I assume this would apply for whichever pilot I chose to deploy first. This glitch still happens every now and then, and god is it annoying. I put out Nagisa and Guilford here because they are cost increasers. Now in terms of who to put in which position, I put Guilford by the bottom blue spot because I don't intend to have anyone in front of him, like Colin for example, who I'm going to put by Nagisa. So Guilford will be handling a lot of the enemies on his own, which unfortunately is not the greatest because they will pass him, but still I decided to put him there by himself, and in the long run it doesn't matter. Perhaps I should have given him a Nightmare Frame with more blocks, like Toto's Bullrai, or maybe Colin's Bullrai, or even just a shield honestly. But I chose to use his Gloucester, and that's what you see right here. I put Suzaku in this spot because one, he's a cost increaser, but more importantly, I plan to put Ashford Lelouch right next to him to stun Suzaku when he appears. I tried playing Suzaku in different locations, and that seems to be the best spot for him because he can best support Nagisa and Guilford, so I figured it made sense to put him there. Millie here is in a good spot to heal everybody, hence why I put her there. The only problem with this position is that when Suzaku appears, he could take her out, so make sure to withdraw her if you want to follow exactly what I'm doing here. So you just noticed that someone got past Guilford, which is fine, because as long as 5 enemies don't reach the blue points, or the bosses don't reach the blue points, then you can still beat the mission. That's why normally I would put Guilford in a position like this, but in this case, it doesn't matter. That Geass Disturber is for Suzaku because the ultimate plan here is that once he hits that spot, Cornelia will attack him, and then I'll eventually put out Ash for Lelouch to stun him once again to inflict more damage. Yay, the stupid glitch returns, like the one we saw before with Millie. God, this game drives me insane sometimes. So as you see here, I put out Cornelia and she's going to intercept Suzaku once he gets to that spot. So I decide to withdraw Millie after using her special, that way Suzaku can't kill her once he escapes the Geass Disturber. I placed Toto by the other section like I said I was going to do before, so now he can intercept all the exploding Borais, which is just awesome. Keep in mind, my Toto nearly died, so if yours is not strong enough, he could get killed here by the enemies. So don't use Toto unless you've really leveled him up. I'd say maybe 80, and then try to get at least the first 3 awakenings, maybe 6. So you see there I put out Lelouch to intercept Suzaku, and again he should be stunned. Suzaku here is actually going to attack, I believe it's Guilford, which means I probably should have just withdrew him from the battlefield instead of keeping him on. I'm not sure why I didn't do that though. So I ended up withdrawing Guilford anyways, so I should have withdrew Guilford before Suzaku attacked him instead of afterwards. A mistake that cost me the ability to use him for basically most of the remaining missions. He will appear later on towards the end, but that was a completely different circumstance. Now another mistake I made here, or maybe it wasn't a mistake, but maybe I should have withdrew Lelouch a little earlier instead of keeping him out there to attack Suzaku. I feel like Cornelia could have handled him on her own, although she did take heavy damage, so maybe keeping Lelouch out there was the right move. Either way though, as you can see, I'm in kind of a mess right here. All my units are in really low health, and 4 enemies reached the blue zones. So this mission was very difficult to do. So to try to help Toto not get killed here, I put out bombs by the spawn point of the enemies, so at least it'll take out a few of them. I was kind of afraid to put it near Toto because the bombs could damage him too. Or I should say the mines, not the bombs. So overall, definitely not my best work. It was kind of a mess all around, especially since a lot of my team is battered for the next mission, but thankfully there will be opportunities to heal them again. If I was to redo certain things, I probably might have changed Millie's position. Maybe I should have put Millie in a different spot so she could still heal everyone and still be out of Suzaku's range. I don't know. Or maybe I could have placed Valletta out there instead of Suzaku, so I wouldn't get the cost increase, but I would get a stronger range pilot, which might have protected Guilford, Colin, and Cornelia better. Either way, I got through the mission, and that's all that matters. Learn from my mistakes here, and don't repeat them when you go through this stage. Okay, so here's my team for stage 4, which was just awful to go through. Felt like actual stage 4. Just kidding though, but man, it was terrible. So a couple of new things here. One, I have the 2 Millies for cost reduction for all Ashford pilots, which is very important to beat this. I have Shirley as an extra healer because you will need her. If you notice, half my team got battered in the last mission, so I need a couple healers to compensate for that. I have Suzaku in the Night Police Glasgow because I felt that made more sense than putting him in a Nightmare frame with a ranged weapon. I tried that actually originally and it just did not work out, so I figured Suzaku makes more sense as a simple passive cost increaser than an actual attacker. I also have Kill and Valletta because they are anti-flying enemies and you'll face plenty of those in this mission. You could of course use Butler, Lelouch, or Minami, but I chose Valletta and Kill because Cornelia can boost their attack power with her Gloucester. Well, technically anybody who uses her Gloucester could boost their attack power, but again, Cornelia makes the most sense for that. So that's it. Other than that, pretty standard stuff. Let's get to the mission. So when the mission starts, you're going to see Clovis and Bartley appear. Now I do not decide to go after them immediately, but you could if you want to. There is one advantage to doing this, and that is the fact that both of them provide a buff to the enemy Nightmare frames. Clovis increases their speed and Bartley increases their attack power. So if you're going to go after one of them, I'd recommend Clovis because the speed increase is very annoying, especially when it comes to the flying enemies as they go past you. And if they're going past you, it's probably because of Clovis. So just like before, get the cost increasers out onto the battlefield and then boost them up later on with better pilots. The reason why of the two I put Suzaku in his current location is because I don't plan on supporting that area with Colin, Cornelia, or Valletta. So the pilot there is going to be on their own, and between the two of them, Suzaku is obviously stronger. So I put Valletta out here in that particular spot because she can intercept 2 flying enemies at once, and since she increases her attack damage to flying enemies, it makes sense that she would go well in this map. Now she's using the Lancelot with the various cannon. I think you can get away using the Borai Diesel, Zero's Borai, or a Sarlin. Just make sure you've remodeled it enough so it does enough damage. I put a Gaffion Disturber by Suzaku because at the moment there are no pilots supporting him. I will have Kill out later on, but until then, the Gaffion Disturber is the best way to help Zaku at this point. It will not be the only thing I do, but it's definitely the first thing that I do. I placed a mine there to take out 2 enemies at once, which was pretty good. Don't be afraid to use your mines if you have to, especially if a weak team like this, I have no choice but to use them in a very, I guess, defensive manner. So this was a moment where I was getting annoyed with that really slow redeployment time for Jeremiah, and I was thinking, come on, let's go already. I want to get my other pilots out. Jeremiah is great, but man, that relocation time is too slow sometimes. So I swapped out Millie for Cornelia because 1, I want Millie to heal Cornelia, and 2, she's a much stronger attacker from Millie and she'll help out greatly in killing Bartley. So this was a little break as you just saw, and that's because the game is helping you regroup. During that time I didn't do a whole lot, so I just kept Shirley there to heal Suzaku. But let's say you're in a situation where you need to regroup, it gives you a couple seconds right here. So I got Kill out here thanks to good timing on Suzaku's part, but in retrospect, it would have made more sense to put out Kill first and then Shirley and not the other way around because more flying enemies got past me when they shouldn't have. However, it didn't matter at the end, but still Kill should have came first, then Shirley. I kind of screwed up that order there. I got very lucky that Suzaku's cost increase effect happened to occur at the exact time I needed it to, but you shouldn't rely on stuff like that and instead put out the Annihilator first and then the healer, if of course you can manage it. So I used Valletta and Cornelia to clean out one side of the battlefield. For the other side, I kept Suzaku there. You might be wondering why I didn't swap him out for Colin, and the answer is very simple. I never had enough cost to do so. If I did, I definitely would have, so Shirley could have healed Colin, but it never happened, so unfortunately I was stuck with Suzaku for the rest of the battle. Maybe my cost increasers had a higher awakening, which would have given them a lower deployment cost, then maybe I could have gotten out Colin for this battle, and maybe Shirley could have healed her, but that didn't happen, so instead Suzaku was the one who faced Clovis. So overall, that was actually quite solid, despite the fact that this mission is complete asinine, and I only got through it thanks to using Kjol instead of Ashfur Lelouch. Like I said before, Butler Lelouch or Minimi could have helped as well, but the Britannia forces just seemed to be the best option to clear out this challenge. Besides that one change that I mentioned, where I put out Kjol before Shirley, I wouldn't change any of my tactics. Despite this mission being a pain in the ass, I think I handled it pretty well. Here is my team for Stage 5, which you'll notice looks oddly similar to Stage 4. That's because it's exactly the same. Because just like in the last mission, there's a lot of flying enemies in this mission, and therefore you need some combination of Valletta, Minimi, Butler Lelouch, or Kjol. And obviously I'm using Valletta and Kjol because they combo well with Cornelia's Gloucester. For this particular mission, I actually will use Colin and Cornelia because you need two strong melee Nightmare Frame pilots to deal with the oncoming attackers. Of the two, Cornelia will play a bigger role, but both are very important. Now that that's out of the way, let's start the battle. So just like before, I get out all the cost increasers. First, the reason why Millie is in her location is because I plan to put Colin in front of her, and Colin has more blocks than Cornelia, so Millie will be safe in her location. And Suzaku will catch the nightmare frames that Cornelia misses, which I don't believe was many in this battle because Cornelia destroys them all. Cornelia here easily destroys Guilford, plus Suzaku and Cornelia will also come from the same spot, so Cornelia needs to be in this location to kill every single one of them. If you don't have Cornelia, I'm sure Uribe or the rank 3 Colin can work just as well. Well, I wouldn't say just as well because Cornelia is quite OP, but they should still be good enough, especially if you build a team around both of them. So what you just saw right there was me putting a mine to kill several Nightmare Frame pilots at one time. Because this is a weaker team than what's probably expected to defeat this mission, you got to be a little crafty out there, so I figured I should put a mine out there to kill several Nightmare Frames at once, which protects Millie and gives me time to get Colin out to the battlefield. You don't have to use the mine at that particular point, but I thought it made sense because not only did I take out a lot of Nightmare Frames, I also took out pretty hard ones to kill, like the Night Police Glasgow or a Gloucester. So you don't have to use the mine there, but I definitely recommend using them in general because it definitely helps you out in tight spots like this. So Colin is going to start out here basically dead. I think she has 0 health, but since she has her immortality ability, she will not die for quite a while, which gives me enough time to heal her during the battle. Normally you wouldn't get this lucky, but with Colin you do. So I placed Kill here instead of Valletta because I'm going to use Valletta for Suzaku when he appears. Until then, Kill will handle the flight enemies, at least from that side of the map. As for the other side of the map, I will use Millie to take out at least one of the flying enemies, and I think that's enough to the point where if they all reach the blue zone, I won't lose the game. So you don't have to worry too much about the flying enemies on at least one of the sides, as long as you take out at least a couple, which is what Millie can do with her special. The Geass Disturber here is to help Cornelia take herself out, and then of course Suzaku. And there you go, Millie just took out one of the flying enemies with her special ability. I don't think that bomb was necessary, and I probably should have saved it for Suzaku. It didn't matter in the long run, but just keep that in mind. So just like in the last battle we had to deal with Suzaku and the Varus cannon, I immediately withdrew Suzaku and Millie because from previous experience Suzaku tries to attack both of them, so this way he can't kill them. So I deployed Valletta to help Cornelia take out Suzaku. So as you see, the last flying enemy on the bomb section reached my blue zone, and we didn't lose the game, which shows that that area wasn't that important to focus on. In fact, if all of them reached, I don't think it would have mattered in the long run. So that was stage 5, really not that bad, much better than stage 4, particularly because the flying enemies weren't as annoying in this one. And as long as you have a really good melee attacker and combine that melee attacker with a supportive ranged Nightmare Frame pilot and a Gaffion Disturber, then you should have no problems taking out Cornelia or Suzaku. And don't forget to use 2 healers because of the fact that it gets kind of crazy towards the end of the battle. Other than that, if you've got a pretty powerful team, this should not be difficult to complete. Okay, so here's my team for stage 6, which is not too hard to defeat, but notice I have D-Tard there, and having D-Tard in this mission is very critical. I'm not saying you can't beat it without him, but you really need him, especially if you don't have a strong team, because when Suzaku appears at the end, D-Tard will protect your pilots from him. I also have the 2 Millies on this team because I'm using both Shirley and Ashford Lelouch, and so it made sense to do this. I have Valletta on this team to deal with the flying enemies, and Lelouch will handle them as well. You'll see during the gameplay. Now, one of the hard parts about this map is not knowing the spawn location for the different bosses. Well, lucky for you, after watching me play through this, you'll know exactly when the bosses appear, so you can plan accordingly. That was one of the hardest parts about this challenge. But once you know the spawn locations, defeating this map is not that hard. So Cornelia is going to take out Guilford and their Cornelia, and Colin is my solution to dealing with Suzaku. You could of course use Toto, but he doesn't deal as much damage, so it'll just take longer to defeat Suzaku. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to the gameplay. So at the beginning of this battle, you notice that I paused. I will do this often before I start placing Nightmare Frames just to make sure I know where they're supposed to go. Also remember, this took many times, so I wanted this one to count. So I want to talk about this formation because, believe it or not, it took me several rounds to get to this point. The reason why the rank 3 Millie is in that location because she's no longer in the range of Dalton's Nightmare Frame, so he can no longer kill her, which kept happening in my previous attempts at this level. She also has easy access to heal Ashford Lelouch or the rank 2 Millie. Ashford Lelouch is also in a great spot because he can take out the flying enemies that reach the blue zone or support Cornelia down the line. So this formation seemed simple, but it took way too long for me to figure it out. So I put Colin in that location because that's the best spot for her to not only take out enemies from the other side, but also Suzaku when he appears as well. Valletta in this position gives her the best chance to take out all the airships and support Colin in destroying Suzaku. You have to put Shirley in this location if you are following my formation because it allows D-Tar to cloak both of them. So that Geass Disturber is for Suzaku. I also should have placed it earlier, but it doesn't really matter in the long run. But I wanted to get it out before the Night Police Glasgow appeared. So one thing to note here, I withdrew the rank 2 Millie way too late, which allowed one enemy to pass by, and also Millie took serious damage. Cordelia should have been out as soon as I had the cost to pay for her. So as you see, Cornelia took out Guilford with ease without relying on her Nightmare Frame skill, which is why I have her position facing forwards, so she can take out Cornelia when she comes from the other side. So this step is very critical. You see how I placed D-Tar and he cloaked both Valletta and Shirley. That's very important because Suzaku will have no choice but to target Colin instead. And since Shirley is healing Colin and Valletta is attacking Suzaku, plus Colin's also attacking Suzaku, you'll have an easy chance to get rid of him. So you notice I was pausing a lot at that point. The reason why is, on harder missions, you want to get the timing perfect for Nightmare Frame skill activation or perhaps placing a Nightmare Frame pilot. So often I will pause as if it's a turn-based RPG. And so what you do here is you pause, select the pilot you want, unpause, and then choose an action, either deploying this Nightmare Frame pilot or using their Nightmare Frame skill ability. Since time moves slowly in that menu, you have a better chance to get the timing right, as you see here. Now when it comes to Dalton at this point, he's going to keep firing at Cornelia, and because Cornelia has a lot of health, plus Millie is healing her, he will never take her out, so essentially you're creating a soft lock. So right now, not a lot is happening because Cornelia and Dalton are in a deadlock. So I am now going to fast forward to when Lelouch's relocation time expires. Now something here I should note is that I put out Millie on the battlefield, and you might be wondering why I did this. Well, it's because it allowed Shirley to heal her. One of the best strategies in expedition mode is to deploy a weakened pilot in a location where you have a healer at a time where nothing's happening, like what's happening here. In this case, because Dalton and Cornelia are in a deadlock tie, this means nothing is going to happen for a while, so it's safe to have Millie out there for Shirley to heal her. If you ever have an opportunity like this while playing a given mission, you should definitely take it. So that was stage 6. Not really that difficult, but quite time consuming. The trick with this one is to have a pilot with a high melee attack power and a pilot with high defense so they can intercept both Suzaku and Cornelia. D-Tard is also really important here. You could use Ashford Lelouch instead to stun Suzaku, but that's not as effective as cloaking the units because it'll also force Suzaku to face Toto or Colin or whoever you put on the battlefield. Once you learn the spawn locations, this map is not hard to defeat, assuming of course you have a capable team. Okay, so here's my team for stage 7. Now before talking about the team itself, you probably noticed my rank between the two missions is significantly different. That's because when I first tried to complete these missions, I got stuck on this last stage and I decided to quit hard so I'd be able to simulate the normal expedition levels, since right now it doesn't save your progress. I was originally considering maybe just showing you footage from the recent run of the hard expedition levels, but since I breezed through it rather easily because my team was so much stronger, I didn't see any educational value in showing that footage. But in this case, it made sense because even though I have a stronger team, the last mission was still difficult to do. I speculate you probably can't beat it until you at least get to rank 21. If you guys found a way to defeat it under rank 21, please let me know in the comment section below. I imagine if you did accomplish this, you must have done really well on your initial rolls and had really powerful rank force at your disposal. If however you didn't, you might want to wait till you're at least rank 21 or have a team power of 18,000, which is what the game recommends. Usually I don't care about the suggested power score, but in this case it was accurate. Okay, so now for the team itself. I'm using the Geass, Millie, and Guilford as my cost increasers. I could have of course used Suzaku as well, but I chose to use those 3. You need to have at least 3 passive cost increasers alongside Jeremiah, and they have to be leveled up pretty well because otherwise they won't stand up to any enemies that attack them. This mission is a pain in the ass because you get swarmed very early and you need cost immediately, hence why I'm using the 3 cost increasers. Guilford of the 3 has the biggest cost increase. I gave him Cornelia's Gloucester to improve his attack power, but if you leveled up his Gloucester, that can work too since both have a block of 0. Ashford Lelouch is very important for taking out bosses, specifically stunning them, and he will attack them plus everyone around him. I have Shirley on this team alongside Millie as the two healers, and they serve two roles. One, they protect all the pilots that are defending the 4 blue spots, but they also can take out many flying enemies if their Nightmare Frame skill gauge reaches 100%, which happens more times than you would think. I have D-Tard here kind of by accident. I thought I needed him for Suzaku, or at least Valletta. I don't know if that was really the case or not. If you don't want to use D-Tard, then Ashford, Suzaku, or Toto would be a good replacement, since the Millies will decrease Ashford Suzaku's deployment cost, and Nagisa will decrease Toto's deployment cost. Either way, there's great synergy there. Cornelia's on the team because obviously it's Cornelia, and same with Colin. Both are very powerful characters. So now that all tasks are clear, here's the gameplay to defeating Stage 7 of the Hard Expedition levels.
楽しい狩りにしようじゃないか。差をつく。相手の出方を見る。警告の先やり。参る。私に任せなさい。
What you see here is my initial formation for this battle. I have Guilford, Millie, and Nagisa in 3 of the 4 spots protecting the blue zones. The last spot is going to go to Cornelia. The reason why I have Nagisa facing forward is because her Nightmare Frame skill works better that way, same with Guilford and Millie. With this formation, I'll be able to increase my cost fast enough to get out Millie, Shirley, and Cornelia to deal with the hard enemies. Couple of things to note here. Nagisa used her special in the Glasgow to take out the enemy that wasn't close to her in range. That was a very nice application of the ability that I didn't take into account when I gave her that Glasgow. My initial thought was simply a low cost Nightmare Frame, but that worked well too. Next, I have Millie and Shirley next to each other, who will not only heal the pilots on the ground, but each other if they take any damage. It's very nice synergy. In case you're wondering why I used Cornelia's Nightmare Frame skill there, it was to boost Guilford, who was having a hard time with the Nightmare Frames in front of him. It didn't work, however, but hey, I was trying to boost his attack power. Here's an example of good teamwork where Millie took out the one Nightmare Frame that would have got past Guilford, which was really helpful. Unfortunately, while I like Guilford, he's not the strongest and he lacks blocks, so you need to defend him when you can. So you saw that I struggled to get Lelouch out to the battlefield. Sometimes that happens when I'm playing this game. It is kind of glitchy. Imagine doing this on your phone. It'd be a complete nightmare. Anyways, I placed Lelouch there to stun Cornelia, and then I'm going to withdraw him afterwards, so his cooldown time will expire at the same time that Dalton will appear, so I can use Lelouch against him, and eventually keep spamming him to kill even harder enemies. If you have the rank 3 Colin, or if you have Utterbay, they could probably help you take out Cornelia there as well if you don't actually have Cornelia.
いだろう。潮時か。交代する。
I realized that I used Nagisa's Nightmare Frame skill too early, and I should have saved it for Suzaku later on in the battle. I was still able to win despite this, but it would have made things easier had I not done this. Either way, with Nagisa gone, I can now put in Colin to finish off Dalton.
何度いいか夏の攻撃止められるか。あと少し。次よ次。立ち止まってる時間なんてない。このビレッタがお相手つかまつ。やっとお出ましか。
So I used D-Tard on Millie, Shirley, and Guilford because I was afraid Valletta might take them all out. It's possible that wouldn't have happened, but I didn't want to take any chances. If it is the case that D-Tard is not needed there, then you could obviously use someone else. Once again, I used the Lelouch to stun Dalton just to give Colin an easier chance to take him out.
バカに構う必要などない。立ち止まってる時間なんてない。あと少し頑張ろう。これ以上は止められない。勝つのは私だ。駒としてはまずまずだな。やりはこちらも負けていられないな。
That's another example of a healer pilot taking out a Nightmare Frame that got past Guilford, which has happened several times already. So a couple of things to point out here. First of all, you'll notice that Guilford was in a stunned state. That is because the Sutherlands have an ability, the melee weapon that is, to have a chance to stun after each hit, which is what happened here. This is a common thing you'll deal with in other hard expedition levels, so get used to it. The next thing to note is that I put out Lelouch to stun them. Oh, the irony. It then used his special to kill all the enemies that Guilford couldn't block because he literally couldn't move. And this is why I saved his Nightmare Frame skill special for things like this. Once again, the Geass Disturber is for Suzaku. I could have placed it earlier, it might have saved me some headaches. This was a mistake on my part. You see, I thought Suzaku had the Varus cannon, so I put D-Tard out there to protect my pilots when that was not the case. In fact, I think that's why I had D-Tard on the team at all, because I was concerned about the Varus cannon, which of course wasn't a problem here. This is why I think you could use someone like Todo or Suzaku instead of D-Tard. So I removed Cornelia because I thought I might be able to use her later on to fight Suzaku, which I should have realized was a mistake. Instead, I should have kept her on the battlefield. That way, her special ability could boost the strength of all the pilots that are deployed. That might have made the last parts of this battle less nerve-wracking.
うんうんごめんね足をバレちゃってしくじったかも
So you probably noticed that Suzaku took out Millie, but since this is the last stage, I don't really care too much because at this point I could sacrifice all my pilots, and as long as I win, then it's totally fine. If you do screw this up, of course, and you fail the mission, you'll start out as you were before you started the mission, so there's no problem in sacrificing your pilots to win the day if it is the last mission.
最も愚かな手を打ったな。
私の攻撃止められるか借りは返させてもらう
For some reason here, I took a while to get Geass out, and you see here, because I didn't save her Nightmare Frame skill, I can't use it here now on Suzaku. I will eventually get it back to 100 again, but I could have gotten 2 shots here instead of just 1. Also, D-Tard's relocation time just expired, so I could have put him on the battlefield. I don't know if that would have made a huge difference, but it definitely was an option. Now imagine if he was Toto or Suzaku, well, that'd be a different story.
ひるむな押し返すどんどん行くわよ
差をつくわ。相手の出方を見。
いいだろうそこだ
ああ、それ以上奪われてたまるか。
ここまでか
So I honestly thought I was going to lose this mission. I only used Millie as a last resort to take out Suzaku by using her Nightmare Frame skill ability. I didn't think it actually would work, but it did. So I got real lucky here. I will also admit that if Lelouch did not have the land slot with the Varus cannon, I don't think I would have gotten away with this. But if I had planned better for Suzaku, I would not have been in this situation to begin with.
私も負けないから
すまない。みんな。
やったわそんなもんよ
さすがだな。よくやった。
ありがとう
For the most part, that was quite clean. The only part I could have done better is if I replaced D-Tard with any other melee attacker or defender like Toto or Ashford Suzaku. Another thing I could have done differently is maybe given Shirley or Millie Zero's Borai so they could have targeted 2 pilots instead of 1. It did make a huge difference in this battle, but it's something else to consider. Other than that, I think that's the best way to go about doing this, where you have your cost increasers blocking the majority of the spots. Have Cornelia take out Cornelia because she's the hardest of the 4, even though Suzaku was a pain in the ass towards the end. So that's my guide how to defeat the hard expedition levels. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. By the way, speaking of expedition levels, we just got a brand new expedition event, which includes a brand new Lelouch. If you want to learn more about this new Lelouch, click on this video right here.